Hi, thank you for tuning in to the Logic of God podcast. I'm Cody.
I'm Gina.
And I'm Ben.
If you're returning, thank you for coming back. And if you are a new guest, welcome.
Welcome back. It's been some time since we last spoke.
Minutes, hours, days, I don't know.
Weeks.
I've lost all track of time.
So we're on to Genesis 43. We left it off with Jacob forbidding, essentially, Benjamin from going to Egypt. Reuben had offered so graciously, and Jacob was like, nah.
You're not going, and that's final.
And Reuben's kill my kids if I fail. But now, in chapter 43, we will read, Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain that they had bought from Egypt, their father said to them, Go again, buy us a little food. But Judah said to him, The man solemnly warned us, saying, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Israel said, Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother? They replied, The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother? What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, Bring your brother down? And Judah said to Israel, his father, Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge of his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would have returned now twice. That's a lot. All right. Am I the only one who sees that they're like, let's eat what we've got, see how Simeon does. He'll be fine.
You can see there's so much dysfunction in this, even in this particular exchange between Jacob and his kids. Like it comes off funny. It's like, Dad, we're almost out of grain. Why don't you go and buy a little bit more? We can't. He said that he won't see us. Why did you even tell him? Why did you even tell him you had another brother? It's not like we could hide it. He was asking us all kinds of questions. How are we supposed to know he was going to react that way?
I feel like I just read the script to Freaky Friday. So is this them saying Benjamin is more important than Simeon? Is this just that they're hungry and wanted more food? Would they have truly left Simeon indefinitely if the famine had ended?
I think that Jacob definitely would have done that.
Yeah, the last chapter we just covered, Jacob believed him as good as dead. He lumped him in with Joseph.
Yeah, and in the language in this first part of this chapter, they're really not talking about Simeon. They're talking about going and getting more grain, whether or not Simeon comes home. Interesting. I love that Robert Alter notes the narrative irony here. Simeon languishes in prison while the family's, should we go? Should we not go? I don't know. Jacob's definitely got some favoritism going on. There's a lot of extra biblical information on this part. I don't know how much you want to add, but I really liked the last two on my list because we've got the book of Jasher and then we've got the testament of Simeon, and it gives interesting perspective, although it is pseudepigrapha.
Be careful with the book of Jasher.
Yeah, no, that one.
Forgery.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the testament of Simeon specifically. Yeah. So the testament of Simeon talks about his perspective, but then also, which one is it? There's another one that talks about Joseph sneaking food to Simeon without him knowing that it's from him, which I found really ironic. Yeah.
Yeah, where are they pulling that from?
It's actually, I put that in Genesis 42 notes. So give me a second to find it.
So while you're looking for that, I do think it's funny because I think some time has passed here since Simeon. The next course of events happens pretty in succession. So you have them going back to Egypt, but the next few chapters lumped in pretty quickly together. But when they get before Joseph again, Joseph still says that there's 5 years left in the famine. So if they went to Joseph relatively at the start of the famine or close to it, give or take a few months, and met there, then Simeon has been possibly in jail for up to 2 years while they were just chilling out.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly how long he's been there, but regardless, Judah basically says we could have gone and returned twice by now. And while it's not exactly like they are a stupid, ridiculous distance away, they're not a quick trip either. It's weeks of their life, months of their life to get there and get back.
I think, okay, so I don't know how to say his name, Gerard von Rad. He has this idea that this family will not act for love, only for survival. And I see Jacob fighting for that love because he loves Rachel's son. Okay, but then the other family members are like, what about the little ones? What about you? Are we all to die because you don't want to give up Benjamin? Like, you have to balance the need for survival with acts of love. But is it really an act of love to hold Benjamin back from any kind of future that could possibly exist outside of what I'm assuming is like a family compound?
Yeah, and I think this is where you start seeing the narrative in the Christological form shift to Judah. Like, this is Judah's character development. I think that you see in scripture that's overlooked a lot. He is thinking about, one, he's calling his dad out and we are not going back there because we're just going to die. He told us we were going to die. He said, like Joseph said, you'll live if you're honest men and you bring back your brother. Like, the alternative is death if they show up again without Benjamin. And he's emphasizing that here with Jacob, but he's also saying, if we don't do this, the little ones are going to be at harm. We are not going to survive if we don't take Benjamin. And then he goes into saying that he will be personally responsible. So this diverts from Reuben, you can kill my sons. Don't do anything to me. Kill my sons if Benjamin dies. Judah is taking personal responsibility here instead of passing it off on his offspring or somebody else.
Well, and we see the power already. This isn't a full act of sacrifice yet, but it indicates that's in Judah's character. And we see what a display of responsibility does to galvanize people to action, how important it is for people to take responsibility. And Judah is largely responsible for what has happened to Joseph. And he should be the one to take responsibility because it was his idea to sell Joseph into slavery. And I think it's an act of irony that it's Judah that's the one to take responsibility. He doesn't understand that this is what he should be doing, and yet it's right that he does it.
And if Jacob knew that it was Judah who sold him, he would not trust him with Benjamin.
No.
Just like he didn't trust Reuben.
I don't think he actually trusts any of them, but at this point, I think Judah is being honest, and he's right that they don't have any options. And as much as Jacob might love Benjamin and not really care that much about what happens to anybody else, a famine's a famine, and if everyone dies of starvation, that includes Benjamin, and that includes him.
I do find it really interesting that Judah's like, with all of the time we've spent arguing on going back and forth, we could have been there and back twice. Like, compared to how 42 started, where Jacob's like, why are you staring at each other? Go. And now he's, let's stare at each other.
It is an interesting inversion of the two, yeah.
And then Jacob accuses the sons of treating him so badly to reveal they had another. Like, why would we know this is a secret? This is weird, Dad.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to bring up literally everything he possibly can to stall going. He just starts throwing out accusations. He's like, why'd you even tell them? This is your fault. It's clear that he's upset and he's raging at everything, and he knows what has to be done, but he's dragging his feet as much as possible.
I did also think it was weird and interesting. Like, Judah now cares about the little ones. In the chapter that we did a few weeks back on Judah, he had 3 sons, but he really wasn't concerned with continuing the lineage. He didn't want to promise Tamar to his third son, and he ended up getting tricked into having more offspring with Tamar. And so now you see this character development that the little ones are important to him enough to use them as justification to go back into Egypt. I think that's notable. It shows maturity, and it shows that the children that he gave Tamar, he's continuing to protect.
So Jacob in the next chapter finally concedes to, do we want to?
Let's keep reading. Yeah. So verse 11, then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother and arise, go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So one, Jacob's sending presents, but compared to what he sent Esau, when he was really afraid of Esau coming against him when they were reuniting, this is a pittance. This is nothing. And I think part of it is the fact that they're in a famine, but I think also Joseph is giving up. Like the saying when he says, I'm just going to read the exact verse. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. That is a Hebrew idiom, like it is what it is. He's giving up.
Oh, yeah.
So he's sending what he thinks might mean something, but it's minimal compared to the passionate, like gift-giving, meeting, wrestling that happened previously in Jacob's life. If he's really going to lose everything, fine, whatever it is, what it is.
He's also seemingly throwing out a bit of a bone to his sons, where he says, take double the money. Perhaps it was an oversight. This is like after all this time arguing with his sons. And I do genuinely believe initially he was accusing his sons of selling Simeon. At this point, he's saying, you know what? Okay, maybe it was an oversight. Take double the money back with you. Go. And we'll pay for everything. And we'll try to give gifts. And he's trying to make everything right. Like this, from him, is an act of humility. It's him throwing up his hands and saying, I surrender, whatever it is it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think this parallels Job quite a bit. Like it has come to that point, and maybe Joseph's testing is testing his father more than he realizes, because Jacob is having to basically come to terms with losing both of his sons, like the potential there, and just giving it to God, so to speak. And it's very hard for Jacob.
But Jacob is accusing his sons on and off of maybe selling his son, maybe just not being honest, maybe turning against him and oversharing. Like Jacob ultimately is the reason why all of these delays are happening. Jacob is the one that's keeping his son in slavery. So maybe it's the other son's fault that it happened, but Jacob is the reason it's continuing. And I think that judgment is coming against him quickly.
I think a lot of this is judgment against Jacob, because the truth is a lot of this happened because of him in the first place. It was his favoritism towards Joseph that caused his brothers to hate him so much. And now it's his favoritism towards Benjamin that's delaying the return and reuniting of the whole family. He doesn't even realize it, but he could have been reunited with Joseph much sooner. Like the number of good things that would have come from him simply trusting his sons, sending Benjamin, letting go of everything, months prior, maybe even years prior to this point. He could have gotten so much more just treating his family as his family and putting trust in them. He could have gotten so much more not treating Joseph as the favorite, trying to take control from God and trying to point to Joseph in front of God and saying, no, this is the one I choose. Therefore, it's the one you choose.
I think it's the human confusion between man's capacity for love versus God's capacity for love. Jacob is really valuing love, like the emotion, as the most valuable attribute relationally in his family. And God is actually, that's not my definition of love. And I need to teach you the correct definition of love. Because what Jacob is, I really what Origen says. He says this is the cry of a man tested beyond measure. He's despairing. And Jacob is being very emotional here. And God is like reframing that to be useful. But if we get stuck and trapped in those emotions, it's very chaotic and like oppositional to God's purpose.
Yeah, I think Jacob's life is a good example of the impact of the head of the household. Like you've seen his inaction with the rape of Dinah, and Simeon and Levi took that into their own hands because of the lack of action from Jacob. And you have Jacob's influence, and there is a law later, a Mosaic law later, that prevents the favorite sonship, so to speak, that is exemplified in Joseph with Jacob, and the impact that has on the entire family, because Jacob is showing favoritism and elevating somebody and not really seeing the impact that's having on the rest of his household. And then here again, like his delay, his indecisiveness is causing more suffering for Simeon, and they're out of food at this point. So like Judah's comment of the little ones will be impacted, I think, is that they're close to the brink of death, or it's imminent at this point if there's no action. So he's forcing his father's hand here because Jacob is so indecisive or against what is going on.
And yeah, I don't like the term generational curse so much, but there's an element of truth to the idea. When we look all the way back at the time of Abraham, we see that there's a consequence that leads all the way down to Joseph and Jacob because of what Abraham does, choosing his own favorites, attempting to take things into his own hands. He produces Ishmael, who is not a son that God told him to have, because he tries to wrestle control away from God and fulfill things the way he expects he has to. Because of what he does, ultimately there's a child that's chosen and a child that's rejected. And that creates a very confusing dynamic for Isaac. Isaac grows up with that confusing dynamic. He institutes that same dynamic on his two sons. One of them he chooses. That's the favorite. That's the one he wants. He wrestles control away from God. He's like, Esau's the one I choose. But then he swapped out, and he accidentally blesses the wrong child. That child grows up knowing the pain of not being the one that's chosen, not being the one that's loved. And what does he do? He institutes that exact same dynamic, but this time there are 12 kids. He has a wife that he chose. He rejects the other wife and the other two women that are having kids with him. And he rejects 10 out of the 12 kids and really only chooses 2 as his own. He does the same acts of favoritism, the same acts of trying to wrestle control away from God by choosing Joseph that his father and his grandfather did. And it's odd to me, very fitting in fact, that Judah's act of saying, okay, forget all that, I don't care, I take responsibility, let's do this. It's that act that starts to bring everything out of it. Someone takes responsibility, saying, I don't care about any of that stuff. This is what we need to do. If we had done it right from the beginning, we would all be fine now. So let's do it right now. And we don't really hear many stories after Genesis about chaos in the tribes of Israel as they're in Egypt. I'm sure there was conflict, I'm sure there was strife, but we don't hear the same talk of favoritism, of that kind of familial insanity. It seems as if they're all together and suffering together and trying to bear one another's burdens. Can we say that's all because of Judah? I don't know. But I think it's interesting that it's him and his actions here and in Egypt that seem to set the family on the right track.
I do think that it is a callback to the covenantal promise. Remember all of these people that are the grains of sand in this promise. Okay, moving on. Verse 15. So the men took this present, and they took double the money with them and Benjamin. They arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, "It is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time, that we are brought in so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys." So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house and said, "O my lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it with us again, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We do not know who put money in our sacks." He replied, "Peace to you. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. So Joseph orders an animal to be slaughtered. Interesting. So when you look at the animal being slaughtered, there are some traditions that talk about this animal. However, before I even got into the extra biblical stuff, I was immediately reminded of the goat blood on Joseph's coat when he was sold. And I was curious if there was a connection to this and the sacrificial animals and different things. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? No?
I don't think there's a connection, but
So
maybe one of our listeners has thoughts on that.
So the Midrash Rabbah 92:4 explicitly ties the two together. The goat was used for deception, but Joseph's feast animal is used for truth and revelation. It brings them back together. So what divided them now reunites them. I think it's maybe ironic more than it is literal, especially because we're not told what kind of animal was slaughtered. And if you look into what kind of animal could have been slaughtered, the only text that names the animal is the Pseudo-Jonathan Targum, and that one says it's an ox. So doesn't really connect, and also is dubious to begin with. So I thought that was interesting. I don't think it's sacrificial or like super meaningful, but I do like the idea of it. And then, go ahead.
I feel like it's not sacrificial. I feel like Joseph is luring them into a trap. And we see that the brothers, their initial reaction is very much that feeling, where they say, "It is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we are brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys." They're assuming that he's bringing them into his house because he plans on enslaving them. So in response to that feeling, they go up to the steward and they try to smooth things over. They try to get a sense of what's going on and they try to get ahead of it. And the steward in response is, "Oh yeah, I already know about all this. It's okay. God gave it to you. We have your money."
So why did Joseph bring them to his house and not like a public or official building?
It's weird too, because like this giving them water to wash their feet and they were told that they should eat bread is very reminiscent to the travelers in Abraham's time near Mamre. So they wash their feet and they have morsels of bread to eat, and we know who they are. So
That was angels.
Is this divine hospitality here? And not necessarily saying it's an angel, but the servant in here is just popped out to me. "Peace be with you. Do not be afraid." Is very linguistically similar to what we see a lot of messengers or the angels saying when they encounter humans and they're afraid. Potential connection there. Some early church fathers like Origen also make that connection. I don't know how much weight to put into that, and I don't necessarily see that as 100% the case there, but there's a lot of connection and weird linguistics in this part here.
I can definitely see that. The trouble is that in the next chapter, the steward also chases after the brothers and terrifies them and accuses them of doing theft. So this isn't the only time this character shows up. It's clear that he has been the steward for Joseph for a while, and he continues to play into this deception that he knows isn't true. So he seems to know what Joseph's plan is. He seems to know what's going on. When Joseph later tells him to do something deceptive, he plays along with it. So now that isn't to say that angels can't be deceptive or play along with deception if there's an ultimate truth they're revealing. But it seems odd. Like an angel being Joseph's steward, is he just deep undercover and playing along for like years and years for this exact moment? Is he doing other stuff? I don't know. It's possible. But I think you're still right. I definitely see the divine language here, if nothing else.
I'm not convinced that Joseph knows what he's going to do yet. Like, I think he's thinking about options, and he knows that Hebrews are not looked upon in a friendly way by the Egyptians, especially feasting with the Hebrews would have been frowned upon culturally. So I think he's concealing from the Egyptians what he's up to because he's not sure what he's going to do. He's not sure if he wants to feast alongside them. He's trying to toe the line of both lives, and he has to make a choice here. Am I going to choose to be a Hebrew or an Egyptian? And he's still not ready to make that call.
Yeah, I think this actually goes back to the dreams that Joseph had. We're about to see the fulfillment of the first dream, where the 11 sheaves bow before the one sheaf. He is still a child of Jacob, a child of Israel at this point, according to the dream. But he doesn't stay that way.
No. And again, I put a ton of extra biblical texts here, but I don't feel like we need to go over them unless you guys want to.
That's up to you.
Interesting connections, but I think it's a stretch. Like Augustine sees the house meal as foreshadowing the Eucharist, breaking of the bread, the covenantal breaking of the bread. I do see that, but I want to talk about it in a second. So the brothers think they're in trouble, think they're about to be enslaved. Foot washing happens. The brothers prepare the present, and then we can go back into the Bible.
I think that also the foot washing is meant to be something that unsettles the brothers further, because I don't know if foot washing is common amongst the Egyptians, but like you said, Cody, that is something that's common amongst these people, the brothers. So he's providing them something from their culture. It's indicating he knows them. He knows something, and they're already unsettled.
Hygiene was really important to the Egyptians, so I don't think it's too far off for him to expect them to wash, because that's what was expected of him to be in the presence of Pharaoh.
Yeah, foot washing was also pretty like general for Annie.
Yeah, we've gone over that a few times before. It's a cultural thing from the ancient Near East, especially living in dusty regions. So let's keep reading in the Bible. Verse 26. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them and bowed down to him on the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, he is still alive." And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn, according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs, and they drank and were merry with him.
So I think there's an important detail here, a couple important details, but they tie together. Joseph sits on his own, the Egyptians sit separate from him, and still further, his brothers sit separate from him. And the reasoning it says that it gives for this is because eating with Hebrews was detestable, an abomination to the Egyptians.
But he doesn't even sit with the Egyptians.
No, he sits separate from the Egyptians, but he also sits separate from his brothers.
This is that turning point I mentioned. He doesn't know which way he wants to go.
He doesn't know.
No, so like the Egyptians know he's not Egyptian. He looks like one, and if they know he's not an Egyptian, then maybe that's why he's sitting, or he's the head of the household. He has this overview of everything that's happening in his house, which is very royal motif for pretty much every single hierarchy.
Yeah, I don't think the pharaoh commonly sat with other Egyptians to dine because he's pharaoh. And Joseph at this point practically is a pharaoh himself. But I still think it's interesting the reasoning that it specifically says that he sits separate and the Egyptians sit separate and his brothers sit all alone is because it would have been an abomination for him to sit with them. I think at this point he does, or at least has started to consider himself to be Egyptian. Maybe he's still teetering on the edge a little bit, but it does seem like he's starting to make up his mind about what he is.
There is this sort of idea in the ancient Jewish documents that talks about how he's setting himself apart because he doesn't want to set off red flags on either side because he knows the famine isn't over yet and there's still quite a long time to preserve his family. I do think that's possible here. I do think he might have started after seeing Benjamin to be swayed to protect his brothers, especially seeing how he keeps asking if his father is still alive.
Yeah, but even there, like, he could have gone to see his father prior to this. Rather than messing with his brothers and testing them, if he really was so concerned about his father, he should have just gone to see him.
Or made the same request. Like, where's the patriarch of your house? Like, why hasn't he come and seen me? He could have requested for Jacob the same.
And he ends up requesting for Jacob after all of this is done.
I just think it's a fine line. You can't discount all of this tradition. Although I agree with Cody that they jump through a lot of unnecessary hoops to deify Joseph pretty much. But I do think Joseph is torn and he wants revenge and he wants justice. He wants to preserve his place of honor in Egyptian culture, knowing that the whole world is falling apart due to a famine. But he also has tender spots in his heart for some of these people. And it's very difficult to have 11 brothers and love one and know that the other 10 would die for him. And so there's really nothing that Joseph could, like, it's such a fine line. He has to be so careful.
Yeah, I do think that he's struggling. I think that he's got so many different emotions welled up inside of him. Like, we literally see that when he sees Benjamin, he has to run out. Like, he has to run and find some place for him that he can cry.
For hours.
Until he can finally compose himself enough to where he can go back in and then sit alone, separate from his brothers, and watch them eat.
Now, I do think it's worth talking about how old Benjamin is now, because they keep referring to him as a boy. And then when you look at the little cartoon movie, I can't remember what it's called.
King of Dreams?
King of Dreams. He's like a little teenager boy, like 13 in the movie, but he's not actually in the Bible that young. So how old is Benjamin now? And what tells us how old he is?
So I think he's in his early to mid 20s at this point. You have Joseph, who's at least 32 at this point. He's 30 when he comes to power in Pharaoh's house, and then 2 years of famine have passed that we'll find out here in this story.
He's 37.
He's 37.
You have the first years of...
Oh, yeah, the grain. So, yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah, he's older, so it would be 7 years of rest. So he's 37 plus he's 39 now.
So Benjamin's probably in his early 30s.
Yeah, so that would put Benjamin in his early 30s, yeah.
I liked Rashi because it really cements the manhood of Benjamin. He's the father of 10 sons when he goes to Egypt. This is not an innocent, virginal little boy who has no life experience. This dude has 10 sons. He's rivaling his father in offspring.
Who has 10 sons?
Benjamin, according to Rashi. That's not biblical.
Yeah, so this word, Hana'ar, means the youth or the young man. You can interpret it as boy, but realistically applicable here is more the young man. And I think the reason they keep referring to him as that is, one, the infantilization. Like, he basically, like, mentally, I don't think he's all that well developed because he hasn't been allowed to be. But also, he's the youngest. he's the baby. And the truth is that I'm still treated as the baby in my family. I will always be. It doesn't matter how old I get. I'm the baby.
And you covet that position, I'm sure.
I don't.
No, so yeah, I don't think he's super young at this point.
No. I love Chrysostom here. It's ironic. A man in his 30s with a large family is treated like a lad. Like, my sweet boy. Grief distorts Jacob's vision.
Yeah.
So, do you guys think that because we've talked about it before, covenantal bread breaking, do you feel like with Joseph setting himself away from his family and not breaking bread at the same table, that's one of those lines in the sand that kind of puts the last nail in the coffin for him not being included in the tribes?
I don't know if we've reached the last nail in the coffin yet. I think what he does in the next chapter is the thing that ultimately seals his position. But I can't help but think of the imagery from his second dream, where it doesn't specifically say that he's looking up from the ground. But imagine for a second, he might as well be miles away from his family at this point. He's at a separate table looking at his brothers. It says they're being merry with him. And in his dream, if he was like looking up from the position of the earth, stars millions and millions of miles away bowing to him, his brothers, but they're not with him anymore. And I think we're starting to see that dream, that vision of the future start to take shape, where he's not with them.
Yeah, I think I still see him filling this. He's still playing this tester role. He's sitting away from them, like, so he can observe them. There's this distinct giving Benjamin 5 portions, which I think there was some midrash that I was reading that says that he lined them up by their age. And in A&E context, the head of the household, the patriarch, would get the dish first, get his portion, then it would go to the next oldest and the next oldest and the next oldest. And by the time it got to the least of these, there wouldn't be that much left. Everybody else gets their fill before the youngest. And he is exemplifying that. Again, I think it's to test his brothers to see where their loyalty really is, if they're still in the same headspace that they were with him. He is showing the favoritism to Benjamin that they're all used to. That,
and he's testing how they're going to respond to it.
So they still jealous of that favoritism like they were with me? And he gets to watch that. And like it, and I think it's important that the Mary there is actually intoxicated. Like he got them drunk. And I think it is to
take down their guard.
So it's to take down their guard and to see if they slip up at all. Because being intoxicated, it's harder to control yourself and your emotions reign free.
Well, and it will also make it easier for the next stage of his plan to go into effect if they're all drunk and headed home, all kind of buzzed and happy.
What about the connection to the Last Supper? You wrote that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because you have, just like the 12 disciples at the Last Supper, you have the 12 disciples and what should be the 12 tribes here. And then you have Judas, who has this ulterior motive going into the Last Supper. And Joseph is right there with an ulterior motive to this meal that he's hosting. Like he is not there to enjoy the company and give honor where it's needed. There's something else going on behind the scenes there. In the Last Supper, you see this clear delineation of the devil possessing Judas here, and lends into that Satan motif, the adversary motif. And this is connecting it directly to the devil. And I don't want to, again, paint that picture of Joseph per se, but you can see the parallels of in the imagery in this meal that they're having, that there is ulterior motives coming in and betrayal is right at the doorstep.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that linguistically Judah and Judas are the same name, and yet Judah is the messianic line and Joseph is the betrayer here.
And it's also interesting that Judah is the one who betrayed his brother before and sold him into slavery. And now the roles are reversed, and now Judah is the one who has taken responsibility, and he's here on behalf of his whole family and is trying to make things right. Whereas Joseph is the one scheming and testing his brothers, getting them drunk, intoxicated, poking and prodding, trying to find the kind of men that they are now. And also, ultimately, I would agree with Cody, seeking to betray them.
Yeah, just like and that's, Augustine took it a weird place with the Last Supper. To me, I think, again, it's the oversight of the adversary role in humans' lives, and where we hear the adversary in our own life, the betrayal this will solidify Joseph. He will have nothing to worry about. No one could make him as a Hebrew after this. He would be clean slate. I think he is looking for a just reason to murder his brothers, or at least wash his hands of it. If they betray Benjamin, they're the same that they were, and they don't deserve to live anymore. And I think he's looking for that, and that betrayal motif is present just like the Last Supper.
And it's possible he's even thinking he's being merciful here. It's possible his plan is ultimately to bring Benjamin in, because he does genuinely love his brother, and Benjamin has done nothing to him. And that's his last true brother, his blood brother from his true mother. Bring him in, not really make him his slave, but actually under the pretense of making him his slave, and then basically bringing him up and adopting him, so to speak, making him his son, his brother in Egypt, and sending his other 10 brothers home with double the money. And he's already set the scene with his father, making him think that potentially they sold Simeon. They return home without Benjamin and double the money again. What is he supposed to think?
I absolutely love the ambiguity when Jacob says, "May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin." Which other brother? We think Simeon, but we know his heart longs for Joseph. And the irony here is that he's about to get him back.
He's about to get his whole family back.
Everything that he could have wanted, he's about to get. And it's sad because it's in his old age, and it's after so much dysfunction and turmoil. But God is very merciful here. And I would say in a global famine, again, it's miraculous that all of these men have survived.
It's also a miracle, the number of things that people have to let go of. Joseph ultimately has to let go of his desire for revenge. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. He goes very far. He does a lot of things he shouldn't do, that I don't think the Christian tradition calls him out for nearly enough. I think it sanctifies him a bit too much, treats him with kid gloves and glosses things over. But ultimately, if we're all being honest, like, yeah, these guys deserve it. From Joseph's perspective, at the very least, he hasn't seen these guys in years now. And what did they have to do this to him? But he has to let that go. The brothers also have to let go. They have to let go of the fact that Joseph's been toying with them once he finally comes clean. They have to accept what they did to him. They have to accept responsibility for it.
Yeah, they have to face their father.
Yes, they ultimately come clean to their father. Everything comes to light. And then Jacob has to accept the fact that his brothers did something to Joseph. They lied about it for years. They sold him to slavery. And he has to accept that he lost some of the best years of Joseph's life to slavery. But he also has to accept that this was what God wanted, that it was a part of God's will. It could have gone other ways, but ultimately he has to accept that this is the best bad thing, the best version of what the bad thing was.
We're all in this room marked by tragedy. And I think we can all agree that things have happened to us that should not have happened to us. And Joseph is such a great example of the choice that can be made in seeking that righteous justice. I think we have to remember and be cautious as Christians. People might never be sorry. There may never be a moment where you reunite with who hurt you. and they have to face the music. Now, of course, there is divine judgment. We know that God will hold people accountable for their acts, but in our lifetime, we may never face the person who hurt us and hear that they're sorry. They might not even think of it the way that we do. And so we have to be so cautious not to hold on to these things and to just move forward in peace and forgiveness, allow our bodies and our minds to heal, and allow God to work through that and use it for good. Part of the lesson here is the dysfunction that comes from this family and their inability on all sides to let go. The brothers couldn't let go of jealousy. They couldn't let go of their mother's battle. Jacob couldn't let go of his favorite son, the children that he deemed legitimate. And then Joseph, he couldn't let go of the pain that was caused to him, but I think he also couldn't let go of the cushy life that he was given by Pharaoh himself. So everybody struggled with that control, and ultimately we have to surrender. That is one of the hardest lessons that we take away from this story, is figuring out how to surrender. And I think what we can be comforted by is the fact that Joseph screwed up a lot, and yet there is redemption. Like we have the opportunity for redemption. So
letting go is not the same thing as forgetting. Joseph forgot, and then he was forced to remember, and then he had to confront it. His initial confrontation of his past was not successful. It wasn't godly. But eventually, he confronts it. He doesn't forget. We tend to think that forgiveness is forgetting. It's not forgetting. It's confronting. It's letting go. It's saying, you don't owe me anything. You should. By all earthly rights, you should owe me everything for the things that you do to me. But I let go of it for your sake and for mine.
thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our podcast today. If you liked what you heard, please feel free to subscribe and share and leave a positive review. And if you would like to connect with us on social media, you can do so on Instagram and Facebook at The Logic of God. You can also send us an email at main.thelogicofgod@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. We hope you have a great day.